In this very first class, we are going to talk about very basic things like the definition of a computer. So, what's a computer? A computer is an electronic device that processes data to transform various tasks, such as calculation, data storage, and information retrieval. So, the first thing I want you to know is as you go through your journey in IT, you don't always have to give the textbook definition. If you ask for a definition of something, just explain it how you understand it. Explain it in such a way that a 5-year-old would understand what you're saying. And computers, we have two things playing computers. We have hardware and we have software. And the very first question, what is a hardware? A hardware refers to a physical component of a computer. Physical. Yeah, the key word here is a physical component. For example, we have the central processing unit, the CPU, the memory, which is the RAM. We have hard drives, we have monitors, we have keyboard, we have mouse. So if you have a monitor standing in front of you right now, that's the hardware. If you have a laptop, that's the hardware. The physical things you can touch, those are hardwares. What about softwares? Software, a computer software comprises of programs and applications that instruct the hardware to perform specific tasks. These include operating systems, word processors, web browsers, and games. So, for example, when you use your computer and you open something like Microsoft Word and you type in some characters, let's say you're writing a letter, a mail to somebody using Microsoft Word, guess what? You are using a piece of software because the instructions that you put into Microsoft Word are, for example, I would say, I love Texas. I'm putting instructions. I'm hitting my keyboard and I'm saying, hey, type this in the screen. So this is a piece of software. Your operating system, or if you're even going to google.com to browse the internet, Google itself, the Google Chrome is a browser and it's a piece of software. I can write here computer and it can show me, maybe if I go to images, I can see pictures of computers. And so these are computers. All of these are hardwares. And I've shown you hardwares and I've shown you softwares. And we're using like a browser right now to browse. So that's a piece of software. I'll move on to the next one. And an operating system is a software that manages computer hardware and provides user interface for users to interact with the computer. Common examples include Windows, Mac, Linux, Android, Apple. There's so many operating systems out there. So we have Windows, which is very popular, right? We started back in the days with Windows XP. We use it was Windows 98. Depending on how old you are, you would have seen probably Windows 98. There was also MS-DOS. There's Windows XP. We also had Windows 2000. There was also Windows Millennium around the year 2000. There was also Windows Vista. There was also Windows 7. There was also Windows 10. Today we have Windows 11. There have been different versions of the operating system. In the world of Linux, which we are going to treat in another course, we have different operating systems like Linux, we have Ubuntu, we have Red Hat. These are operating systems. Okay, so again, our definition of operating system is they are just softwares that manages the hardware of a computer. These are softwares that you installed on a computer to be able to use that computer. So it's called an operating system. What about a CPU? A CPU is like it's the brain of the computer. It's responsible for executing instructions and performing calculations. It interprets and executes instructions from computer programs. So the CPU is the guy who does all the math within your computer, right? It helps to do computation and all of that stuff. And uh, just so you know, in this lesson, we're not going to the details of the type of CPUs and all that stuff. Again, remember the whole reason for the bootcamp is for us to get you where you need to be. So I have 20 years of experience, and I'm just gonna help you not to waste time. As you go further in your career, you can decide to go back and learn about types of CPU. But for you to get to where we're going, we really don't need all of those deep details right now. And let's talk about RAM. What is a RAM? RAM means random access memory, right? It's temporal memory that the computer uses to store information. It's very temporal. So we call it one the RAM. Okay. And then what about a hard drive? The hard drive is what the computer uses to store data. Like if you save something in your computer, it's being stored in a hard drive. And you can go back to that hard drive and retrieve files. So we have hard disk drives, HDD. We use spinning disks. It's like there's a CD inside that spins and then writes your information. SSDs, which is another form of hard drive that are extremely fast. These are all flash memories. Flash memories. They use flash memories. Remember, like your USB drive, the one you use for USB storage. That's also a flash memory. So SSDs are extremely faster than the hard disk. So they are what we call in the industry solid state drives. They don't have moving parts. Now, let's talk about an input device. What's an input device? An input device is a device that we can use to put information to the computer. For example, you have a laptop, you have a keyboard, that's an input device. You have a mouse, that's an input device. You have a touchpad, microphones, like you put things inside the computer using these input devices. What about an output device? An output device is a device that displays or produces information from the computer. Example, we have your monitors. Like right now, you're seeing things that are happening inside your computer. You're watching this video on your monitor. So your monitor is actually an output device. And you also have printers where you write stuff, save them, and as soon as you print them, when they come out, those are output devices. What about a file? What is a file? A file is a collection of data or information stored on a computer. If you store something in a computer, that's a file. If you take a picture of your baby girl during a graduation, it's a photo and it's also a file. If you write a list of stuff you want to get from the grocery store and you save it in one of your apps, that's also a file. You can create files, and it's a collection of data information stored on the computer. Files can be documents, images, videos, or any type of data. What about a folder? What's a folder? And we call it folder and we also call it a directory. Yeah, so these are all used are like containers that are used to organize stuff. To organize stuff, you can store stuff inside a folder. And I'm sure you've used folders before. In fact, I'll do a quick example right here. I'll demonstrate how folders work. I could just go to my desktop and I could right click here on the desktop. I could say new, and I can say folder. They should create a folder. I can call this folder Jacob, and I can literally create a bunch of files, pictures, and I can save them inside of this folder called Jacob. So that's what we call a folder. Very straightforward, nothing complex. We're going to go ahead and do a few more definitions. And the next one we're going to talk about is a desktop. A desktop is like what I just took you right now, right? A desktop is the primary screen on your workspace in a computer where icons, shortcuts, and open windows are displayed. Like this is my desktop. I have it right on my monitor screen. If I minimize right here, you see this is my desktop. That's just what it's talking about. And what about a browser? If you have to go on the internet, you need something like a browser. That many you have Google Chrome, you have Mozilla Firefox, you have use Edge. Some of you will have Apple devices, use Safari. That's also a browser. A URL, Uniform Resource Locator. What is it? A URL is a web address that specifies the location of a resource on the internet. Anything you see on the internet, be it a picture, a video, or a file, the exact address that locates you that you can click to get to that specific stuff you're looking for, it's a URL, a Universal Resource Locator. Now, what about viruses? It's a computer. A computer virus is a malicious software. That's a bad software that's been designed to infect and harm a computer system or its files. It can spread into other computers through infected files or emails. Let's talk about a firewall. What's a firewall? A firewall is a security system that monitors and controls incoming and outgoing network traffic. And we're going to go deeper into firewalls, but it's just something that stands at the door of your network. It's like the door of your house that says, hey, you can come in, you cannot come in. I know this person, they can come in. And that's what a firewall does. What about encryption? Encryption is the process of converting data into code to protect it from unauthorized access. You take something that's clear as good morning and then you convert it to some code, some like gibberish. Nobody can know what you write. Decryption is a reverse process where what you've converted into code, the receiver can literally just change back to plain English so that they can understand what you sent to them. So encryption is the process of taking plain English text, you convert it into code, and then you send it to somebody so that if it's intercepted, a hacker or anyone will not be able to see what you sent. And it just really helps with privacy. And that's encryption. And most of the time, when you go to websites like, let's say we're visiting the Bank of America, we want to browse on the banking website. Let me go to Chrome, my browser, and let us visit the Bank of America. Let's say we want to visit. In fact, I should use Edge. I like Edge because it's gonna show the padlock. Let me use Google Edge, Microsoft Edge. And let me see if I go to buffer.com. And this is the Bank of America. You can see here clearly that there is a padlock right here. This padlock means that's encrypting data between me and the internet so that if somebody were to intercept this communication, it remains anonymous. So that's what we mean by encryption when we talk about encryption. Okay, the next thing we're going to talk about is about a website. What's a website? All of you have visited websites before. It's just a collection of web pages and that have related content. You could browse. You've gone to CNN.com, Google.com, Amazon.com, all of those websites. What about a web page? A web page is a single individual document. It's part of a website, but it's just specifically one document from a website. That we call that a web page. Okay. It's a single document, individual document on the web that contains text, images, multimedia, and hyperlinks. Web pages are typically written in HTML. And don't worry about HTML if you don't understand what that is right now. I understand completely that this is a very foundation class. And as we go deeper, I will explain a lot more to you. Now, the next we're going to talk about web browsers. What are web browsers? Like I just showed you Microsoft Edge, Chrome, Mozilla, and actually, we use those things to visit the internet. Let's talk about HTTP, Hypertext Transport Protocol. What is HTTP? HTTP is a protocol used for transferring data over the World Wide Web. That's the internet. It defines how web browsers, like your Chrome, your Firefox, and web servers like Google, right? When Google is sharing things to you, they have something we call servers. Servers are what store the information. So it defines how web browsers and web servers they communicate to exchange information. So it's a protocol. And what do you mean by a protocol? A protocol is just a way of doing things. Let's say you are going to the White House. There is a protocol of how you get into the White House and how you talk to the president or how you greet the queen and all of that stuff. When you go to a presidency, there is a protocol to follow. So on the internet, we have protocols that help to establish communication on the internet. When you're using your web browser or your laptop or your cell phone to access a website on the internet, guess what you're using? You're using this protocol called HTTP some of the time because there was another version called HTTPS, which is way more popular. That's what is called the Hypertext Transport Protocol. The same name, but this time it comes with the word secure. It's very secure. And if you remember, I just showed you guys a browser with a padlock. That's what helps you to prevent your stuff to be seen, right? It gives confidentiality to your transactions. And that's what we call encryption. Let's talk about web hosting. You have a beautiful website, you build a website, somebody has to make it available for you on the internet. Those companies that help you to store your stuff on the internet so people can visit it, they're like web hosting companies, right? Web hosting is a service that provides storage to store your stuff, server resources, and internet connectivity for websites to be accessible over the internet. They help your websites to be on the internet. So that's what we mean by web hosting. So the next slide, we're going to talk about a domain name. We already talked about a domain name, www.google.com, www.example.com, www.abc.com. So a domain name is a human readable address that represents the IP address of a web server. So we're going to go a little detail into that as we move further through our class. But for the moment, just understand that's a domain name. What about HTML, Hypertext Markup Language? It's a language that we use to write websites. For example, if you build a website, you use something we call HTML, Hypertext Markup Language, to write how the website appears, like the programming language of the web. And it's very, very easy, so this should not freak you out. It's very straightforward. What about a hyperlink? What's a hyperlink? A hyperlink is often referred to as a link that is a clickable element on a web page that redirects user to another web page. For example, I'll show you a quick example of a hyperlink. Or if you go on google.com or the bankofamerica.com or any of these websites, you're going to see links that you can click. So if you come, for example, here, and let's say we go to ebay.com, I click on eBay. One of the things you will notice is when I click on eBay, I come here. If I bring my mouse over here, it's something I can click. We call that a hyperlink. It can take me somewhere. In fact, if you look down here when I do that, you'll see the address where it's going to take me to. So I'm over there. There you go. The address shows up at the bottom. That's called a hyperlink. If I click on this shoot, it also takes me somewhere. Those are all called hyperlinks, guys. So I'm gonna minimize again a little bit, and we're gonna hit the road. What about a search engine? I mean, all of you have probably used this, right? When you use Google.com, Bing.com, these are search engines. A search engine is a web service that helps us to find information on the internet. There are so many things on the internet all across the world. So how do you get that information? You have to use a search engine like Google. They'll try to go around and get all of that for you so you're able to have a better experience. And let's talk about web development. What's web development? Web development is the process of creating and maintaining websites. It includes front-end development, the user interface and design, and back-end development, server-side functionality. So don't worry about that. As we go through our journey, you'll understand what all of those things mean, right? You also have a content management system, CMS. It's a software application that simplifies web creation. We have some like Joomla, WordPress. There are things that we can use to build a website. We call them CMS. What about a blog? A blog used to be so popular. A blog is a website that typically features regularly updated content on the form of article or post. Let's say you started a rabbit business and you're raising rabbits and you want to write to people and tell them on a regular basis how to raise rabbits. So you create a blog and let's say you update it every Monday and they have to follow that. That's a blog. And e-commerce, you know what e-commerce, electronic commerce, right? Buying and selling on the internet. You know Amazon, you know e-commerce. So we already talked about that in our next class, the next section, we're going to talk about parts of a computer. We already talked about a few of them, but I'm going to take you back there and we're going to talk about parts of a computer.